I am from Not Okay Club. We are a nonprofit organization that teaches community care and creative self-expression through fiber arts for Black women and Black non-binary people. We represent the New York chapter. There's Ariel over here, who is our New York chapter leader, and Ruby Summer, who's the VP. Hi, come on in. It's okay. It's fine. You can come in if you'd like. Okay. And yeah, so we represent the New York chapter, but we have chapters in other states as well, and we have a lot of virtual members. So we are doing our first live stream for them so that they can participate in the things that we do. So I'm very, very excited. And Not Okay Club is actually how I met Chrissy, because she came to one of our meetups earlier this year, and we learned more about her and her work, and she's a crocheter as well. So Chrissy, I will let you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them about you.
Hello everyone, I'm Chrissy King. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to chat with you all. A story that I don't think I ever told you, Camryn, is that I actually found out about Not Okay Club because you all were doing an event at Dawn.
Yeah, the bookstore.
And I was there for something else. And I was like, oh my god, where are these cute Black girls that can crochet? And it reminded me that I wanted to learn. So I went into the class after I saw you.
What? Really? Oh my gosh.
I started crocheting. And I'm like, I'm going to go there next month and I know how to crochet.
That is awesome. I actually did not know that. But see, this is the type of thing that we really like to hear is like, because some people, when they hear about Not Okay Club and they really want to access like our resources and events, and they say, oh, well, I don't know how to crochet, so I guess I can't do it. But we do have a Crochet 101 guide that we share with people where it's like, even if you have attempted fiber arts, you're still welcome to join. And especially because we promote fiber arts as a way to help with your mental health. There's also lots of other things that you can do as well, but I always say to people, I'm like, it's not as like, you know, daunting of a task as you think it is, and especially when you see other people doing it, it really does make you want to, like, okay, I can pick up a hook and see if I can do a little something. So that's great. I actually did not know that, but it makes me feel very successful. I'm like, that's the goal. I want people to see what we're doing and be like, you know what, maybe I should try that. That might be helpful for me. So, yay. Okay, that is good to know. So we will be talking about Chrissy's, besides crochet, because we could talk about crochet all day, that's my thing. We're actually going to be talking about Chrissy's book, The Body Liberation Project, and to learn a little bit more about body liberation and body image, especially for Black women. I do want to give a quick content warning before we start that we are going to be talking about mental health and eating disorders, things related to fatphobia and things like that. So if at any time you want to step out or it's too much or anything, we won't talk too in depth about anything distressing, but it is a very emotional topic. It is very personal. And although we are going to be up here talking about it, we'll also be, this is sort of more of an open discussion as well, so we can all kind of do some audience participation. So you don't have to share, but also if at any time you feel uncomfortable or anything, you can step aside, someone from our team can talk with you. But I just want to give that warning so that everybody's aware. But yes, so with body image, that even just saying the term body image is like a very loaded thing. It automatically brings to mind various types of responses and memories from your life. And Chrissy's book, although it is part memoir, but it also has some very practical instructions and questions that really get you to think about your own body image and your own relationship that you have with your body. A lot of times people don't even necessarily consider the fact that they do have a relationship with their body, obviously that they have one, but in terms of like what is the state of your relationship, how comfortable are you with it, how much do you love yourself, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, I love my body, I feel okay, but we have to, right, exactly, but do you really, and it can be very distressing or vulnerable to kind of admit that I actually don't have a good relationship with my body. That was something it took me a really long time to actually come to terms with. But body image is something that everybody has. So all the messages that we get about your body, the things that people say, the things you see in the media, all of that affects you. And if you aren't able to kind of address it with yourself or with others, you're a little bit more prone to being negatively affected, especially by whatever's going on. So Chrissy, her experience learning more about her story and how she came to write this book, it was really moving for me. So I will let her tell you a little bit more about her story and how she came to even writing the Body Liberation Project.
Okay, I have to figure this out. Like, think about this.
Yeah, you see this is really close to my mouth, right? But I might put it in my hand too, just for the vibes.
Okay, so body image. Where do we start with this? So first of all, most of you maybe can't tell because I'm sitting down, but I'm almost 6 feet tall, which is actually cool. I like it now. But I was actually 5'8" in 3rd grade.
In 3rd grade? Oh my gosh.
Was not cool then.
Yeah.
Also, I'm from the Midwest, so I moved to Brooklyn like 6 years ago, but I grew up in Wisconsin. And I also was homeschooled until I went to school in the 3rd grade, actually. So when I went to school in 3rd grade, I was 5'8". It was my first time going to school, and I was the only black girl in my class. And there was 2 other black people in the school, my brother and my sister. Yes, that was great. And also, it's just like, I was at a school that was in the suburbs, and I know that most of these kids had never interacted with like black people before at all. I had like kinky curly hair. Everyone else, was like blonde and blue eye. And I was actually taller than my teacher, which is like really awkward as well. And my brother, actually my siblings are great. I love them. But they did used to call me Jolly Green Giant, so that wasn't that great. Anyways, all that to say is like I've just always had, from a very young age, I was like hyper cognizant of my body. And I think when I was younger, I was like, well, you can't physically be short, or that's not a thing. So I'm like, well, I could try to be skinny. Like, that's the thing that felt like accessible to me. And I think now that I understand more about like body image and like white supremacy and race and like gender and sexuality and how all of those things like impact how we feel about our bodies, like I can also understand that like I was just like really trying to find some type of access to privilege. And so it felt like to me like thin privilege could be the way that like I could be accepted. And also it's like the 90s, right? So it was like Tyra Banks was like the beautiful black person, right? Or Naomi Campbell. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna be tall, I should be skinny. And I don't know why, I literally don't know whoever told me this because I don't think I did. But I was like, if I'm gonna be tall, I have to be skinny, because if I'm not skinny and I'm tall, then I'm like a linebacker. And that was like a consistent thought that I had when I was younger. And so, I just like always struggled with body image through like adolescence. When I got to high school, I finally went to high school that had like black people there, so that was great. And that definitely eased some of my stress. But I also fluctuated with weight a lot when I was in high school, and I remember I gained some weight. And I don't even think that I like noticed that I gained weight. Like I was aware, but like it didn't bother me until this boy said something in front of everybody, and he's like, "Oh, we can tell you've been eating good." And I was like, "Oh." So I was like, "Okay, well, I need to fix this." So I drove myself to the bookstore and I bought Atkinstein. Did anybody remember that?
Atkinstein.
Yes, I did. I bought the book and I read it and I like followed it religiously. And I lost like 40 pounds. And then the thing is, then when I went back to school, everyone was like, "Oh my God, you look so good." And I was like, okay, this is the thing I need to do. And so I spent a lot of like high school and then into like college yo-yo dieting. And just like struggling with my weight and just doing like these quick unsustainable things. And it really impacted like how I felt about myself and my self-worth. And then when I got to like my 20s, I remember thinking like, I'm so tired of like doing these diets and gaining weight back. And then it's like, I was just like, I'm going to do this the right way. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to start strength training, which I did. I started strength training, which for me was a big deal because I like never had physically like worked out like that. And I got really into it actually. And I started really enjoying it. I started powerlifting. Is anybody familiar with powerlifting? So powerlifting is like bench, squat, and deadlift, and then you can compete. And so I started competing, and I got really strong actually. I was competing nationally. I could deadlift 500 pounds, so I was really proud of it.
Wait, 500?
Yeah, like that's the one off the ground.
Oh my God!
I can't do that today.
Okay, I was about to say, wait, that's a lot.
But back then I could. And so I was really like enjoying strength training, but at the same time I was still like really focused on my body. And so I remember that I was like at one like the leanest body I'd ever been in. I was also the strongest I'd ever been, but I was still like really, really unhappy. And I was still always thinking like I should fix this thing, or I need to do this thing, or I need to lose a few more pounds. And I was also married at the time. And my partner was really supportive, but I don't think intentionally, but they definitely like. I think unintentionally supported my negative habits just by trying to be supportive, right?
Right.
So I was doing all these very disordered things, but they were like, "Well, you just want to be healthy. It's okay." And the only person that really called me out on it was my sister. But anyways, I remember this weekend I was with my partner. I had to go somewhere with his in-laws, and I was not excited for it because I'm like, the only thing I can think about is I can't like monitor everything I'm eating. Like I'm gonna have to eat off my plan, like all this stuff. And so we went to this water park and we left to go like have lunch, and I packed all my food for the whole weekend and left it in my car. which is really sad, yes. And so I was eating this little sad like wrap, and they asked the restaurant if I could bring it in because I had like eating restrictions. And so the restaurant said yes. It took me like 5 minutes to eat, and I was just sitting at this table watching everybody just order food and eat. It smelled so good, and I was like, this is actually really miserable. I can't even enjoy like food. Right. And so that was like a real turning point for me to like start to recognize that I'm in this body that I thought would make me happy, and I'm actually more miserable. I have a worse relationship with food. I have a worse relationship with exercise. And that kind of led me down my journey to understanding like what body image is, but also the implications of body image. Mm-hmm. And especially for a Black woman, because I think when I was growing up, I didn't really talk to people in my family or any of my friends about the negative relationship I have with body image, because it was, to me, it was like, that's like a white girl thing. And even eating disorders, like white women are the face of eating disorders.
Right.
And so like it took me a long time to unpack all of that. But as I started to unpack that and like understand different intersections, and I remember one of the first books I read was The Body's Not Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor, which is like a beautiful book. And she really talks about the impact of like race on body image, and that really was like something that really opened the door for me to help me to start to heal my relationship with body image, but like also understand like how many things impact how we feel about ourselves.
Yes, and that is, I think what you just said towards the end about how you didn't really talk to anyone about your body image and the fact that you had one, and like white women being the face of disordered eating, all of that is very, very prominent. And I think like even just when you say that, what comes to mind, even when you say like the words eating disorder or even with body image, I'm thinking, you said you grew up in the 90s. I don't even know if I can count it. I guess I grew up in the 2000s. I was born in 98, but I grew up in the early 2000s. And even then, like the way that they talk about your body on TV, when, you know, in movies like Mean Girls, and they're like, oh my God, I got a fat ass. And it's like, oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world to have a fat ass. And then it's like a few years later, they're like, oh my God, it's great to have a fat ass. And then they're like, no, it's bad again. So having all of that sort of mixed messaging and like nobody really to talk to, and even the feeling you were saying about watching your whole family eating and enjoying themselves, and you're feeling like the odd one out, like eating your, you said your sad wrap. I can just visualize you sitting.
I was just sitting in the car all day, wilted lettuce and all.
Wilted lettuce. No, yeah, see, and what you said about also being miserable in a different size. I think that is a message that we get a lot from society, that like if you do lose weight, you know, like, oh, losing weight before your wedding, losing weight before big events, or just if you lose weight, you'll be happier, you'll be in a smaller body, and thin is pretty, and you'll be happy when you finally lose weight. I can definitely relate to that point, especially. Since 2017, I've lost 100 pounds. I wasn't keeping track of that, and I also wasn't really planning for that. That was something that kind of happened as a side effect of my own mental health struggles, as well as I got diagnosed with PCOS, and I did start eating a different diet, which helped a little bit, but there was nothing worse than when you're losing weight and you're really going through like a hard time mentally, and then people are like, oh my God, you look so good, like, oh my gosh, look at you, like you lost weight, like you said, you came back to school, and oh, you look so great now after your Atkins diet and stuff. It really can, it messes with your mind a lot. It does. And I think that when you don't have anyone to talk to about that, it can cause further damage. And I really hope that we can get into right now, like, where those sort of like media messages are coming from, and like how did you even, because what you said, like, I don't remember who said, but I just knew that I would look like a linebacker if I was big and tall. Like, those sort of things, that kind of subliminal messaging and things that get into your mind. And it's all historical. Like, it's not just from once they started putting it in movies and TV. Like, there's a long history of fatphobia, and specifically the picking apart of Black women's bodies. And so I'm very interested to know from you, like, where you see that through line and kind of where you can trace some of that back to.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on something you said just a minute ago, though. I think, you know, one of the things like I'm a big proponent of is like not making comments on people's bodies.
Yes.
Because it is true what you say, right? Like, we live in a society which is so normalized that if someone loses weight, we congratulate it. And we don't know why they lost weight. We don't know if they're healthy. We don't know, like, anything that's going on. And so it's like almost compulsory, it feels like, to see a person in a smaller body and be like, oh my God, you look so great. It's like you actually have no idea what's happening with that person's health. Like you said, you were in a bad place mental health-wise. Like, there's so many reasons that a person's body could be changing. And also, I just feel like bodies changing is a natural part of life, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing that, like, I feel like we have to talk about, is because so often we get to this place where, like, we get stuck in where we feel is our ideal body. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that when I was, like, in my mid-20s, I would have this, like, pair of jeans that I'd be like, I know I look good when I can wear these jeans. Like, they were jeans that were, like, the marker of, like, my body looks good. And then I kept like having a harder and harder time getting to the jeans. Well, the jeans are from when I was 16. So it's like, the jeans aren't supposed to fit my body right now anymore. Right. So it's like bodies are designed to change. And I think that we have to learn to accept and respect all of our bodies in all the iterations, because life is going to happen. Bodies are going to continue to change. Bodies are going to age. Like, they're designed to do that. And I think that we get this messaging like every day that like we're not supposed to age. We're not supposed to like look different. We're supposed to stay the same size. And it's like none of those things are actually true. And we put so much energy and intention and effort into trying to maintain something that wasn't meant to be that way. And then another thing I think about that's really important right now is like with the rise of like fascism, it's like dieting is such a distraction, right? Like, it's such a tool of distraction, because when you're putting all of your energy into hyper-focusing on how you look and how do I need to lose weight and I need to exercise, am I tracking my calories? It's like you don't have the energy to think about the things that are really happening in front of us. And I'm not going to go on a tangent about this because I'm here all night, but like if you look at through lines throughout history, whenever you see this like really heavy influx of like thin is in again, which we did see within like 2021, is like when it was like all of a sudden it's like this influx of media telling us that thin is in again. And we see like these celebrity figures all of a sudden reverting from the BBLs and getting thin again. And then we see the push to go Ozempic. And we see all these things happening simultaneously to really distract us from other more important things. And I think it's so easy to be distracted by that, especially as a woman, right? And especially as a Black woman, right? And we can get into like the Serena Williams of it all later if you want to.
Yes.
But it's like really, really difficult to not be distracted by those things. So anyways, I don't even remember the question anymore. But that's okay.
No, because
sorry.
No, we can talk about that a little bit, and we'll circle back to because we were getting into sort of like what you said about like the fascism and how it's a distraction. It does involve, like what you said, counting your calories and tracking and like the obsession with your body and with your weight. It does take a lot of mental and physical energy, like especially if you are taking the route of like exercising, but you're exercising specifically for weight loss. You gotta like weigh yourself, you're like tracking, you have to work out constantly, you're like worried about how people are seeing you, and also like the way you sit, like, oh, if I sit this way, does it make my stomach bulge over? If I'm standing, like if I'm doing these things, and that mental energy, the physical energy, it drains you and it makes you so that you're not able to not only focus on bigger issues at hand, but you can't enjoy your life, like as you were saying earlier. So I think that, and also what you were saying about the media kind of influx of these things, it definitely, 2021 is a great kind of tracking point of where you can see of when that's when people really did start taking their BBLs out and all of that. And so it does follow that same thing you were saying about how it's like your body changes over time, but the message is don't change your body over time, but we'll change the body standards over time, but you don't change your body. So it's like, well, do you want me to change to fit? Like, okay, once they say, all right, thin is in, now change to be thin, but then actually now you're too thin and Black women are supposed to have a little booty, so now get a BBL, but actually now take out your BBL because we don't want to see that anymore. Like, that's not something that we can go back and forth with over the course of your life. Like, your body's just going to naturally change, but it is absolutely true that it is taking up way too much of, as a society, all of our collective energy of even like tracking celebrities, like when their bodies are naturally changing and you see a celebrity who was like formerly thinner, then it's like, look at this picture of them, they're bent over sideways, they look fat in this picture, like this celebrity, look at them, you see cellulite on their legs, and now this is a topic of conversation that we all must discuss. Why did this person gain weight? All of those things, it takes away from their accomplishments, it takes away from like the music or the art or whatever it is that you're supposed to be enjoying. So it absolutely is a tool and a weapon of the fascist state. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and also like we can't, it's everything about the beauty standard and the fact that it's constantly changing is intertwined with capitalism.
Yes.
Especially late stage capitalism, right? Because if they didn't keep changing the standard, we wouldn't be chasing something continuously. And as long as we can be convinced that there's something wrong with us, we're going to keep spending money to try to fix that problem. Right? So it's like there's so many things at play, and it's like very intentional. And standards of beauty changing is also very intentional, because what would happen if all of us were just suddenly like, we're okay with our bodies the way they are? Like, what would that do?
The entire economy would collapse. Just society, I think society would collapse because of exactly what you said about how it's intertwined with capitalism. If you just think right now, like off the top of your head, I'm sure we can all like name at least a couple of products that are specifically designed for weight loss. The number one thing that I'm thinking of right now is like the rise of GLP-1s being given or prescribed for non like diabetic or for just specifically for weight loss. That was something that actually kind of caught me by surprise, I would say, because I thought that it would be, I mean, we all know that, you know, people will do anything to lose weight when you make weight loss like the ultimate, most attainable, like this is like the highest honor that you can have, is to be someone who has lost weight. And when other people are promoting it and like the normalization of using weight loss drugs for aesthetic purposes, especially when everyone got on Ozempic, and now there's the more generic brands and the other brands that are coming out. I personally, I've had to unfollow some people. I tried to like block whatever terms that I could, like from some of my social media pages for things showing up, because even though I'm in a recovery stage right now, it can be really, really hard to keep yourself mentally fortified against this sort of messaging. And I think that also, literally no shade to people who are using GLP-1s for weight loss, but it does, make me want to investigate more of like, why do you feel like you need to do that, one, but they're capitalizing on the fact that you do feel like you need to do that, and they're making so much money. That industry has boomed so much, like exponentially in just the past year. And even on like things that are, like even there was like, a probiotic or a prebiotic, things that they kind of market to you a little bit more innocuously, but they're like, but a side effect, the positive side effect of this herb or of this thing is that it boosts your metabolism and then you're gonna lose weight. And so they always use like weight loss as like I think of like a sort of fishing metaphor where they're like dangling this unattainable thing in front of you, and they're like, you could be like perfect if only you would buy this product that would make you lose weight, and then now we can actually, stand to look at you. But it really has become at this point, and I think social media has a lot to do with it, but the media in general has a lot to do with it, but I think that the rapid cycling through and the push of these products and how quickly they're taking root in like current society, modern day, just like the everyday person, I think is very alarming, one, but I think it also is very much on pace with the rise of, like you were saying, of fascism, the late stage capitalism. Like the faster those things progress, the more that this is becoming reaching a crisis state as well.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I do talk about a lot in the book is that like I firmly believe that people should discover the bodies of their own, regardless of how I think about it. But I also have like so much compassion for people, because when you live in a society that tells you that fat is the worst thing you could be, then of course you are going to want to access something that allows you to get treated better by society. And it's not even just about like, oh, do I like the way I look in the mirror? There are systemic consequences for living in a larger body.
Yeah.
And I think we don't talk about that enough. And so it's like, it's more than just, so when people are like, I just want to be smaller, although I feel whatever I feel about that, I understand at a visceral level like why a person would want to access that. And especially for people with multiple intersecting marginalized identities, perhaps being thinner is the one way that they feel like they'll have more privilege in the world, or more access in the world, or more ability to be treated as normal in the world, right? And anybody who has had like a big weight loss transformation, so to speak, you can see, I'm sure you can see this, people treat you differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Very much, and depending on the size of your body, right? So I also have like intense compassion for people, because it is really difficult, it's really challenging. And just like the whole world is set up for thinness, right? From the size of like seats on the airplane, to the size of seats at restaurants. Like there's so many things, or even like people, like you're less likely to get promoted, you're less likely to get pay increases and all of these things based on the size of your body. So it's like they're all really systemic reasons that people are impacted by that. So it's like the work, I think, is like, how are we working to dismantle the systems of oppression that are making it difficult for anybody to exist in their bodies free of harm? That's the work, right? And then when I think about like even GLP-1s, I talked about this a lot on my Substack with Serena Williams. It's like I know people have like a lot of like intense feelings, because they're like, Serena Williams is such a beautiful person, she has a strong body, like why would she use GLP-1s? And I talk about Serena in the book, actually, and obviously my book came out 2 years ago, so the whole situation, but I talked about Serena specifically because Serena is arguably the greatest athlete of all time, right? Most decorated tennis player of all time, and the conversation is constantly about her body, and not just about like, oh, we don't like the way it looks, like people, like from announcers in sports media to people just like fans, calling her a gorilla, right? And so when we think about also the history of fatphobia, Dr. Sabrina Strings has a book called Fearing the Black Body, and it talks about really the inception of like fatphobia and that culture goes back to slavery. And so to call someone like Serena Williams, who's in a darker skin body, who's more muscular, a gorilla is a very intentional choice, right? And so for someone like Serena, who has been on a major stage for her entire life, who has accomplished amazing things in tennis, and yet is still relegated to how she looks, I don't know. I don't find it that shocking that now I have the access to quiet this part of the conversation. And so I think, like, especially when it comes to Black women, I'm like, it actually doesn't matter what a Black woman does in their body, someone's gonna have a problem with it, right? I think about Lizzo all the time, because when Lizzo was in a bigger body, the comments are disgusting in her like on social media comments, right? And then she lost weight, and people in the body positive or fat positive movement are upset with her. And like, it actually doesn't matter what you do, there's always gonna be somebody upset with it, and it's just really hard. I think the thing that I know, or the real conversation is that it's just really hard to exist in a Black body.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, because there really is no way to win as someone in a Black body at all, because there are a million different examples that you can think of anything that you do, they're going to say something about it. And I really do think the point that you're making about how being in a smaller body provides you opportunities and access that you wouldn't have any other way, it's very unfortunate, but I do think that it's something, if you know about like implicit bias, like most people, if you ask them straight up, like, hey, like, how do you feel about people who are like fat? Like, do you hate fat people? They're gonna be like, no, of course not. Like, you know, everybody's fine. Everybody's, especially what you were saying, because that's what I think we should talk about next. You were saying, oh, people in the body positive movement are mad at her. You know, people, especially people who take that stance of body positivity, will be like, no, all bodies are beautiful and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the way that they actually do treat and interact with fat people, that their behavior does not show that at all. And a lot of times people, they're not even aware of the bias that they hold towards people in larger bodies, because they know that it's like a socially unacceptable thing to have, but it's also something that's so ingrained in our culture that to some degree, like, most people actually do. There's something called the IAT, which is the implicit association test, and you can actually take it online. I don't know what the exact website, it's like IAT.com or something, but it's a test that you can take where they show you images of people, whether it's like a race one, there's a gender one, there's one about body size, and you can take that test to see, like, to what degree do you have an implicit bias against bigger bodies. And when I was in college, I think it was when I was my heaviest, probably in like 2018, I was a psychology major, so we had to do it for school. And taking that test and seeing that I actually had a pretty strong bias against fat people, being a fat person myself, it made me very sad, but it also made a lot of sense, because your self-esteem is directly affected by all of the different messages that you get, whether they're positive or negative, and especially when those messages are changing, and when it seems like no matter what you do, people are going to be mad, they're not going to like it. It's very hard to even form some sort of stable sense of self in the first place, and like a stable kind of identification of how you feel about your body before other people can tell you how you feel about it. And so that was something that I, like in 2017, 18, like being body positive, like the body positive movement, it was really gaining kind of traction around that time, and being like a young woman in college. Also the Me Too movement was happening. There was a lot of like feminist works. Also, I studied a lot of women's studies things in school. We talked a lot about that type of stuff, about women and their bodies and body positivity. That was kind of marketed as like the answer. Like, this is the remedy to if you feel bad about yourself, like because you're fat, like, you know, we're just going to be positive. But body positivity, there was also later body neutrality became something as a response to that. But then even more so, when we talk about body liberation, there are lots of different ways that you can approach your relationship to your body. I know we just talked about like all the different things that are impacting it, but I really want to get into sort of what is the difference in these sort of terms when it comes to the way that we can view ourselves outside of the external language when it comes to kind of forming your relationship with your body personally. What do you think about sort of the difference between body positivity versus what body liberation actually is talking about?
Yeah, so body positivity, I think, is like the term most people are familiar with. And actually, when I started trying to like figure out my relationship with body image, that's definitely like the first place that I kind of like delved into. And it was really popular on social media at the time, but even like in whatever. Even when I started doing it, like body positivity had already become very commercialized and co-opted, because the original body positivity movement was founded by fat Black and brown women, because their body wasn't seen as represented, or wasn't seen as represented as beautiful within society, and also was a heavy emphasis on social justice. And as it became more mainstream and more commercialized, like they completely lost the social justice aspect of it. But if you were like just look at the hashtag body positive on Instagram, it's like a lot of times thin white women talking about they don't like their cellulite, or they don't like their thighs, or they want a thigh gap, or they don't like, you know, whatever. And I think there's an important distinction to be made, because most people, no matter who you are, have some type of body image issue, right? There's something you don't like about yourself, whether it be like your cellulite or your stretch marks, right? That is completely normal and valid, but that's also completely different from living in a body that's systemically oppressed.
Right.
And that's where most people can't make that distinction, right? And so it's like, oh, just love yourself, just love your body. And it's like, if you are a thin or mid-sized white woman who's already really close to the Eurocentric standards of beauty, saying just love yourself feels completely different from a person who's living in a marginalized or, you know, systemically oppressed body. And so I think that's one of the big shortcomings of like body positivity. And body positivity also has like a heavy emphasis on self-love. And listen, I talk about self-love all the time. I think it's really important. However, self-love does not prevent you from being harmed by the world.
Yeah.
Like, you can love yourself to as much as you possibly can, and you can still be harmed because of the world that we live in. And so it's like, self-love is, yes, it's important, but it's not the answer. Because again, you could do all that work and still have a difficult time existing in the world. You could do all that work and still can't go to the store to find clothes that fit you, right? Like, those things are, that self-love doesn't fix that. And so that was one of the things about body positivity, is that it's very limited, right? And also, if you've ever been in a negative body image, or having a negative body image day, or just like in a place of like consistent negative body image, this advice of like, look in the mirror and say you love yourself. How does that work?
Right.
It does not work, right? Like, it just does not change anything.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it makes you feel like, wow, everybody else can just do it. Why can't I do it? It's like, it's another thing that you're failing at. And it's like, well, it's because it's unrealistic, right? So then body neutrality is kind of more a middle ground, right? And it's like, I can say I don't love or even appreciate or respect everything about not respect, sorry. I don't love everything about how I look, but I can be neutral about it, and I can show myself respect regardless of how I look. And I think that's a really good place when you're really, really struggling. However, I think that I always talk about our body being the most important relationship we have. Like, we are the person we spend every single day with. And we can talk to other people with kindness and compassion and care. We have to learn how to be able to do that for ourselves, right? Because that relationship is more important than any other relationship we could ever have. And so it's like, while I think neutrality is a great place, middle ground to be in, I think that the goal is to move to a place where you are in a good relationship with this vessel that you are living in, right? And I always talk about that the body is just a vessel that allows us to have this human experience. Of course, there are ramifications for living in this body, but it is just a vessel. And so like, the work is like, how can I learn to love and appreciate and respect every single iteration that this body is going to have throughout my lifetime, because I'm going to have so many different iterations of it. And also going beyond just like, how can I do that for my own body, is this idea of collective liberation. Like, how are we working to change the systems so that everybody has the freedom to exist free of harm in the world? And that's what the work is, right? Because the work is not like, can I just learn to love myself? The world is like, how are we actually changing so that it's not so difficult to love yourself in this world?
Exactly.
And so that's what the work of liberation is.
Yeah, that is a really, really great point. I think that also just our general kind of Western individualism too really does feed into the issue, like the collective issue with body image, because it does make it an individual thing where it's like, well, if you just look in the mirror and you just learn to love yourself, everything will be fine. But it is a much broader issue, and if we all are just kind of seeing it as a single issue, as a personal thing, even if you do build up a strength and a good relationship with your body, like you said, that doesn't prevent you from experiencing harm from people in the world who are either actively or unintentionally causing harm to people who look like you, or who are just not making things accessible for you. Like, those are the broader issues that we have to address. And I do think that that is a really good sort of way of explaining it. To like have moving from an individual issue to more of a collective issue. And so I really hope that, like, when it comes to body liberation, that we can kind of identify, I think we can do that now. What are the main sectors, do you think, of like where, one, we can focus our attention when it comes towards building our relationship with our bodies? Like, what aspects of our life or things do you think that we should kind of look to think about? And also, what are some ways that we can actively fight back against like fatphobia in general, but also just any sort of language or treatment that either we experience or that we see others experience that we know is kind of contributing to that cycle.
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking and talking about a lot lately is, especially with like this idea that like feminism again, everybody's getting smaller and like we're watching people transform in front of our eyes. One of the things I've really been thinking about is that if we weren't chronically online, like it actually wouldn't feel that way. At least not for me. When I think about the people in my life, I'm like, how many people do I actually know in real life, right? And the number is really small. It's actually most of the people that I'm having this experience and that's heightening my feelings are people that I'm watching on social media. And so I'm like, you know, there's so much value in just not being chronically online for more than just your mental health reasons. But I think that's something that I have really been reckoning with myself a lot, is really stepping away from the internet and connecting with people more in real life, because those are the people that like I want to be in community with. And again, so much of my illusion of what's happening is through a screen. And so I think that's really important to think about and consider. I mean, in terms of body, but just like in other aspects of our lives as well, right? Like, I think our nervous system is like currency, and so it's like, how are we working to protect our nervous system? And I think spending less time online is one of those ways that we can do that for ourselves. I think another thing is like, especially that holidays are coming up, a lot of us are going to see family and friends, and everybody's not on board. I've had family members who make comments about people's bodies. I have a whole section in the book about boundaries and like how to set boundaries with people, because I actually do think it's not only important, like it's your right to tell people like, my body is not up for discussion. Like I'm just not gonna, period, right? And I know, depending on your family members, I'm gonna go different ways sometimes. I understand that. Right. But I do think it's important to like have that sense of like, at least I want to make it clear that I don't want to be talking about this, right? And I think within your friend circle, it's really, really important. Like my friends and I, like we don't talk about like diet culture, negative conversations around food or bodies. Like that's really important because we all want to be moving towards having a healthier relationship with body image. And so one way we can do that by supporting each other and speaking the way that we want to speak about all of these things. And so I think it's really involves being intentional, because again, there's so much of this in the world that we can't control. So it's like, how can we control within the spaces that we do have the ability to do that?
I think that's a really important point, like what you're saying about not being so chronically online. I think that, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I did a sort of an unfollow spree a little bit earlier. I do think that if you are going to be online, being intentional, like you just said, about who it is that you're following and what messages that you are taking in. Because if you are following people who are triggering those feelings in you, or who are making you feel like inadequate in some sort of way, or you feel like they are kind of pushing unhealthy ideas or something like that, no matter how much you love them and their content, I definitely do agree. I think that limiting your exposure to those things really, really will help. And also, yes, the holidays, first of all, when you said that, it made me think of a family gathering when I was a teenager that really stuck with me, and it took me down a very slippery slope with my body image. I had seen my aunt that I hadn't seen in a really long time, and she gave me a hug and she was like, "Oh my God, you look at you, you look like a fat Tanya." My mom's name is Tanya. She's like, "You look like a fat Tanya," and I was like, "Fat Tanya? Like you?" Like seeing your family member, they gained a bunch of weight, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" And she was saying it in a very, to her, like innocuous way. Like she wasn't even saying it in a bad way. She's like, "You look like your mom, but if your mom was fat." But for me, as a teenager with a really turbulent body image, that was like devastating. Because also I was like, I look like my mom. Like my mom is a grown woman. First of all, like I look like my mom if she was fat. It's like the worst thing that you could tell like a 13-year-old. But like, I've mentioned it to her since then, and also I think that just kind of the culture in my family, we have been able to kind of speak up a little bit more about some of those things. And even last Thanksgiving, it was like an opposite situation where a different aunt, I had lost a bunch of weight, and she was like, "Oh my God, girl, tell me your secret, you look so good, like what are you doing?" And I think this is just my opinion on when it comes to setting boundaries with like family and stuff like that. I don't shy away from making them like uncomfortable, not in a mean way, but when sometimes people say, they ask you questions that you're not comfortable with, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a very bold question. I don't know why you felt comfortable like asking that question," or something like that. But in that case, she was commenting on my body. She's like, "Oh, what was your secret? What's your weight loss secret?" And I straight up told her, I was like, "Oh, well, I was having a mental health episode. Like, I was having a disordered eating episode. So I'm like, I don't know, you know, I went for a walk, but like, I wasn't doing anything. I just was having a really hard time. And she was very shocked by that. Like, of course, you're not expecting to like get that response. But it did open up a little bit more of a dialogue of, oh, wait a minute, like, first of all, well, are you okay? And I didn't even think of that as something that could be the reason, you know, based on her own perception. She's like, I'm trying to lose weight, and I saw that you lost weight, and so I see weight loss as a positive thing, and so it really did open up that sort of discussion. So when it does come to people who are making, like, unwanted comments on your body, well, first of all, raise your hand if people, you've had unwanted comments on your body before. I'm sure, I was about to say, I'm sure not you haven't had it?
I cannot remember it. I've had comments that I've absolutely been limited by, but I can't remember any necessarily about my body to be totally honest.
Okay, well, you know, good for you, honestly. Yeah. Yeah, you are. It's because it's a very common experience, and obviously also because of your identity. I'm sure the comments you would get anyway are different. People who are, because for various reasons. But it's one of the most common experiences. People feel very, very comfortable all the time commenting on bodies, positive or negative. And I do believe that it's up to you how you want to address those things, but I don't think that we should, like, because it is important to talk about these things. That was something that we mentioned earlier, is that the lack of discussion about these topics is part of what feeds into that sort of cycle, and maybe the shame and embarrassment that you can feel when someone does make an unwanted comment on your body, or something that kind of hits you a little close to home. I do think that we should, or at least I would encourage, that you do feel courageous enough to address those comments instead of, like, it's very easy to laugh it off or kind of shrug it off or be like, oh, haha, yeah, like, yeah. But I do think that the best way for us to kind of break that cycle is by addressing it sort of head on. Like the same way someone was like, hey, you used to have a lot of money and now you don't have no money and now you're broke. Like, you would be, you know, people wouldn't necessarily address, like, you don't feel comfortable addressing, like, every sort of thing like that. So if we treat, like, comments about our bodies and stuff the same way, where it's like, hey, you know, it's personal, we can talk about it, but, like, it's not okay for you to just come at me any sort of way with that sort of information. If you have a real respectful question or comment, like, we could talk about it. But also, if you do see instances, even if it's not you, if you see somebody else doing that to another family member, especially children, because it does start very early. They talk. I was babysitting a family friend who, she's 5 now, or about to be 6, and she was pulling at her shirt. And her shirt was kind of tight. She kept pulling at her shirt. And I'm like, why are you pulling your shirt? She was like, it's tight on my tummy. You can see my tummy. And I was like, yeah, we can see your cute little tummy, little girl. You know, like, it's fine. But she's like, no, I don't want you to see my tummy. And it really broke my heart so bad, because it reminded me of myself being a 5-year-old girl, especially if you grew up as, like, the quote-unquote fat kid. If you were fat in school, like you were saying, like, that was, like, the worst thing you could be, because the kids will tear you apart. But the best way that we can kind of break some of these cycles is, I think, like we were saying, with the setting the boundaries, with actually addressing these issues and not treating it as so taboo, because treating it as taboo is what brings the internal shame. That's what kind of keeps it like, this is a personal issue that I should address in the comfort of my home. Like, but seeing as though we are talking about liberation and the collective, like, taking body image and discussions about our body from a personal thing to a collective thing, I think that's a great way to kind of start breaking those cycles, and also to help you as a person feel a little bit more comfortable with your body and with talking about your body. But I do think the thing about that is, with the relationship that you have with your body, it's hard for you to address or set boundaries around your body if you don't really have a strong relationship with your body. So, like, what do you think, what were some things that helped you, or that you would recommend when it comes to improving the relationship that you have with your body right now? Like, where can we start? We know that looking in the mirror and just being like, I love my body, is not realistic all the time. But what is, like, another good, like, practical approach to even, like, forming the relationship with your body in the first place?
Yeah, so while I don't think, like, looking in the mirror and saying I love myself is helpful, I do think it is helpful to, like, show yourself in the mirror naked. Like, I think that some people have, like, this fear of just, like, looking at the way your body looks in the mirror. And, like, I think that we need to just be comfortable. This is what my body looks like today, right? And it's normal, and it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with this. So I think that's really important, and I think even, it depends on where you are in your body image journey, right? But, like, I think that for some people it could be just like, I don't like the way my arms look, so I never wear tank tops. It's like, just wear a tank top out the house. Do yourself a little exposure therapy, and you realize like actually nothing happened bad today when I wore that tank top, right? So it's gonna be different for every person, but I think it's like little things like that, or like wearing a two-piece swimsuit, it'd be like, oh, I got the stomach is hanging out. It's like, actually that's okay. Like it's just a body with the stomach hanging out, right? Like it doesn't matter. And so like doing these things and normalize that this is how I exist in my body for yourself, but also because it's really, like, we all need to see different bodies. Like, bodies and of all different shapes and sizes existing just as they are is what normalizes the experience that, like, that we're not all supposed to look like, right? And, like, it's so interesting because when we think about, like, genetics, we're like, some of us are tall, some of us are short, and different color hair, and, like, different color eyes, but then it comes to bodies, we're like, oh, no, we're all supposed to be skinny. And, like, that just doesn't even make sense. Yeah, not at all, right? And so it's like, existing in your body is something that is helpful for yourself, but also for other people to see that like it's just another body in the world that looks like mine or looks different than mine or whatever. And it's like really interesting with kids because like you said, children, like they just know what they're programmed. But like my nephew one time, he was like, oh, that person's like really fat. And I was like, yeah, some people are really skinny. Like it's just another way to exist in the body. And so I think like just allowing yourself to do that and sitting with the discomfort of doing that sometimes is really, really important. And also I think just like, I don't know, I'm a big journaler. I journal about my feelings. I journal about everything that's coming up for me. And I think about, like, I also journal about the fact that, like, some days, even now, right, there's this real, like, sometimes another thing with body positivity is, like, you have this idea that some people just never think about their bodies and they're happy all the time with them, and that's literally not true. And I don't believe that anybody ever gets to that point, right? So I still have bad body image shades, and I wrote a whole book about it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like also just sitting with those feelings, like I don't feel great in my body today. And that is okay, right? Like it's okay not to feel good every day. The work is like, how can I flip those negative feelings? Or how can I, even when I'm not feeling good about myself, how can I speak to myself kindly with compassion and with care because I deserve that? Like that's the work. The work is not that every day I'm gonna love everything I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the speaking to yourself with compassion is very, very important. And I think something that someone said to me a while ago about talking to yourself the way you would with your best friend, that is like one of the best ways to think about it, because like if you have a best friend who's fat, you would not you would not say anything disrespectful to them. You love your friends. You would never ever be like, oh, like Bessie, you can't wear that because you're fat, and then people will see. Also, just something that I personally say a lot. I'm like, if you're fat, if you're in a bigger body and you're fat, because fat is not a bad word, so I use fat all the time. If you're fat, people can see that you are fat. Like, we see what you look like, we see the size of your body, we see your arms and all of that. So when you say about wearing a tank top, whether you wear the tank top or not, we still can see your arms. We still see your body, and that's not a bad thing. It's just more about you being comfortable with being seen and with allowing yourself to be seen exactly the way that you are and not waiting for a certain body size or shape before you do certain things. Like, you wouldn't tell your friend, like, oh, you can't wear that tank top because you have fat arms. So, like, why would you tell yourself that you can't wear the tank top because you have fat arms? And that was something, I think I wore my first two-piece swimsuit 2 years ago, maybe, and it took a lot for me to do that. I worked up to it a lot. And once I did that, it was like, okay, you're going to the beach, you're at the beach, you have it was a high-waisted bottoms, but it was a two-piece, it was a bikini, it counts. And literally being at the beach with my friends, and we're all having a good time, and it's like, nobody came up to me and was like, get out of here, you disgusting woman. Like, nobody actually cares. Like, and when they say a lot, especially in the summer, it becomes a big trigger or like a stressful thing because dressing for the weather, and oh, beach body, the whole idea of a beach body. One of my friends said, like, oh, everybody is a beach body. Like, whatever body you have, if you take it to the beach, that's a beach body. Your body is at the beach, so you have a beach body. So doing, like you said, exposure therapy, that's definitely something that has helped me a lot. And talking to yourself the way that you would somebody else, or just kindly in general, I think those are really good examples. And I see now ways that I have done that and how that's really helped me. So I do, and yeah, journaling, I'm like, we're on the same page, girl. Yeah, because I like to journal as well. I think that taking that time to reflect and be honest with yourself about, like, what do I actually think about myself? I feel like that is a really good starting place, like where you said, like, looking at yourself naked in the mirror, like, what do I actually think about what I'm seeing here? Like, that will give you a kind of, maybe a standard, or what's it, like a baseline of, okay, well, if I just did that exercise and I was like, oh my God, that was terrible for me, I feel really stressed after doing that, or I really didn't appreciate it. Yeah, journaling after that exercise, reflecting on how you felt when you had to really face yourself like that, I think that definitely can help. And then you can also see like, all right, well, this is the areas that I need to work on. And if you're like, okay, well, when I looked at myself, my arm stood out to me or my leg stood out to me, maybe doing the exposure therapy related to that specific thing that you were struggling with the most, be like, all right, my arms were an issue, so I'm gonna wear something that shows off my arms. I think that's probably a really good way to kind of combat that. So I appreciate those examples a lot, and I hope that, I know there's a lot of, okay, in a second we're gonna transition into our book signing portion, and then you can take a look at the book, but there are some pages that have more questions and more like things that you can reflect on in terms of like journaling if you want prompts and things where you can start when it comes for you investigating your own body feelings. So I highly, highly recommend checking that out because I'm thinking about, because I took pictures of one of the pages so I could journal about it later. But I do think that those are some pretty good starting places. And I definitely want to, well, first I'll say thank you for sharing that information with us. I'm going to open up the floor to questions from the audience before we transition. If there are questions that you have for Chrissy. Sure, okay, perfect, we're already ready, here you go.
I completely nerded out on this book. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for reading it.
My question, I have so many, but I'm going to narrow it down to one. You talked towards the end about taking up space, and what was really interesting about reading the book is that you didn't talk a lot about fitness itself, and I wanted to know your thoughts on like the militarization of fitness, like the boot camp, the 75 hard, and for us, how do we take up space in those spaces that feel so gross, so hyper-masculinized?
So first off, I really dislike that emphasis on like fitness has to be so hard and has to be so intense. You have to like go until you pass out, right? Like I really, really don't like that. I think that movement movement should be something that nourishes your body. And it does not have to be something that is so challenging that, or like you have to go so hard, right? You get into a lot of these spaces and it's very much like that. And so I think for me, one thing that's really been that helped me feel better in those types of spaces is number one, just feeling competent, right? Like I feel competent in what I'm doing in the program, but more importantly, I feel like going to spaces that actually feel good and finding a gym space or a movement studio that feels welcoming, that feels accessible, that feels engaging, that feels like they are making accessible movement accessible for anybody that comes into it, like any physical body, like any person that comes into it. And so I think that's been really helpful. I've worked out in the past, especially as powerlifting. I worked out in a lot of bro spaces, and it wasn't that enjoyable, right? Like I still did it for a long time because that's just where I was. But it's not that great. I just like when I walk into a space that is intentional about trying to be accessible and inclusive for people, like it just feels so much better. I enjoy the movement experience better. But I think the thing that has always made me feel comfortable over the years is just feeling competent and feeling confident that like, even if, because I don't know if you've ever had this experience where like someone tries to come and correct you about how you're doing exercise or tell you to do it like this, and I'm like, thanks, no thanks. Like I feel really comfortable saying like I'm actually not asking for feedback. And like period, and just leave it at that, because I'm not asking for feedback. And so I think like just developing that confidence even to say things like that, especially like I don't know, like if you like CrossFit or something, like I feel like CrossFit people are really intense. No offense if anybody goes to CrossFit. I just think that CrossFit can be intense, right? And so even when I've gone into spaces like that, I'm like, I'm always at the back of my mind saying that number one, I'm not in competition with anybody here. Number two, I deserve to be here just like everybody else does. And number three, I'm going to make this workout work for me. And if that means making modifications, or if that means like slowing the pace down, whatever those things are, I'm just going to feel confident doing those things and comfortable doing those things.
Yeah, I love a modification. Yeah, because there is a lot of pressure to like keep up with the pace when there's like those high intensity, fast paced workouts. I love to be like, all right, okay, I can't do that. Or like, we're not at the break yet. It's not time to take a rest. Okay, it's time for me to rest. Yes, it's time for me to take a rest. And they're like, push through the next few sets, and then you can have some water. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have the water now, and I'll catch back up with y'all. So I definitely agree. Like making whatever sort of adjustments that you need, and like being in a welcoming space, that definitely changed also my attitude with exercise and working out in general too, just being in a better environment to do that, where you feel safer to do that. So that's great. Does anyone else have any questions for Chrissy related to the book, body liberation in general, body image in general? Where she got her hair products from? Okay. Sure, here, I'll pass it over this way.
Oh, okay.
Do you want the mic
I
or
don't
no?
know.
All right, no problem. You loud enough.
Not a question, but I just want to say thank you for your point about how like it is a way for people like using GLPs, this obsession with fitness in our culture, especially as Black women, like using that as a proximity to be treated well. Because I feel like a lot of people, my body image journey has started with my mother and her mother, who are all petite Black women and like very obsessed with their weight. Like I know my mom's wedding dress weight. I don't know, like why do I know that?
Yeah.
But and it was like a helpful framing for me to think about that. It's like, oh, like she's using this and this like obsession because it's like her way of being treated as well as she can in the world. So I think that was a really beautiful point. I just wanted to say.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's just something that like we don't often talk about. And it's really important to recognize that like people make the decisions they make about their bodies, whether we agree with them. Not, I would still argue that there are other ways to address that, but like people don't always have that skill set or that understanding even. So I think it's really important, especially for Black women or people just residing in Black bodies, period, to recognize that there are reasons that people make the choices that they make, and sometimes it is like proximity to privilege and access.
Also, as a quick addition to that, what you said about how your body image stuff came from your mother first, that is a cycle that I very, 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 very much want for the Black women community specifically to break. We do a lot of times project our own body image issues then onto the next generation, especially because of like your own issues, but also just the fear of like you want to be treated well, you want your child to be treated well, and so controlling your body or teaching them about, you know, how other people are going to perceive their body early, even in like a sexual way, with like the way you dress and like covering up and various things, like doing those things, it is a way for Black mothers very often to try to protect you, or they perceive it as protecting you from like the harm from the world. But actually really the best way that we can go about that is building up that child's confidence and teaching them a little bit more about themselves, building up their own, having like a strong foundation of positive body image, so that way they can go in the world and kind of work outwards and fight for the, you know, acceptance from everybody versus the other way around. So I very much relate to that, and I hope that, I'm not a mother yet, but I hope that the mothers and people, we all have mothers, that's something that we can heal kind of along that sort of ancestral line, is the passing down from like woman to woman of body image issues. I think it's changing actually for the better now, the more of us who are really trying to actively work against that cycle, which is why we were saying earlier about when interacting with family, trying to steer the conversation and change that language. So that was a point that stuck with me too. I'm glad you brought that up. All right, you have a question? Okay, we'll have you first and then we can go here. Do you want the mic?
No.
Okay.
So what was the emotional work you felt you had to do to kind of become your own narrator and drown out the voices of the people who oppress you?
Yeah, so I think like in a personal level, when I was working through my own body image issues, I would say two things. Number one, I think in terms of like people around me, I was my own biggest oppressor. I mean, yes, there's media and all that stuff, but like I didn't have people in my immediate life that were like, I don't even remember as a kid, honestly. I don't even remember my mom like dieting or talking about negative food. Like I don't remember that growing up in my household. I think it was more of like the environment that I was in, and that I saw myself as like so much bigger than the people around me in terms of like physically when I was younger. So I think that was a big part of it. And I think that as I started trying to work through that relationship with body image though, there was a lot of work for me to do in terms of like, I remember at a certain point, like kind of after I started working through it, I changed to gyms. We talked about that earlier because I was at a place that's really toxic in terms of body talk, body image, like all things. And so I switched to another gym because I was just like, I liked that space somewhat. Actually, now that I think about it, I probably didn't like it, but I was used to it. I was comfortable there, but like it was not really helpful in helping me with my own journey. So I think that's one thing. I think I was really cognizant of like what I was ingesting in terms of like media. So like social media, like I think back then I didn't really have the recognition that like I could just spend less time there. That wasn't like a thought in my mind then. But I was really intentional like with who I was following on social media. And so I was like really intentional about curating a list of people. We didn't have TikTok yet, so it wasn't like Like Instagram was very much you could follow the people that you wanted to see in your newsfeed, and so I was really intentional about following people. I was really intentional like podcasts I was listening to around body image, and then like books that I was reading around body image. And so I think I just really immersed myself in community via like books and podcasts or in real life with people that were like trying to work towards those same things, and I think that's what really helped me a lot.
I want to add something to what Chrissy just said about, because my experience is a little bit different. You're like, oh, I didn't really have people telling me stuff. That was kind of all that I had. That was like my main experience growing up at home, but also at school. There was a period of time that I went to private school, and what she was saying about you being bigger than everyone else, but I also was experiencing at that time a lot of like direct and explicit racialized bullying, but also specifically like fatphobia. It was very, very bad. And so when it came to the emotional work for me of like trying to work through that and building my own relationship, I recognized that my relationship with my body actually just came like only mostly from what other people had told me. So I think that maybe thinking about what you've been told in your life and like things that you think about yourself, like where did that thought originally come from? Like if you're like, oh, well, I think that I have like my thighs are too big. Okay, well, like, did somebody say that to you? Like, trying to investigate the source of those beliefs can kind of help you when you're trying to unlearn those beliefs. Because for me, at least, especially things that be like, oh, okay, you know, blah, blah, you're fat, no one will ever love you. Okay, I can trace that back to, like, a boy who said that to me in middle school. And then I have to think, okay, well, I'm now an adult woman. I don't know where that boy is. And, like, am I going to let something that a 12-year-old boy said to me, like, kind of change the course of my life? Is that going to be the mindset that I live under? And so I had to let that go. I had to be like, okay, well, I believe that no one will love me because I'm fat because some little boy said that. But because I don't really believe that boy anymore, like I know that that's not true. There's a million examples of how that's not true. That's something that I can let go of from myself. So I think that also just kind of maybe investigating like why it is you think certain things can help too, because it can kind of help you to see, like, or if I saw that in a movie, they made a fat joke in the movie and they said that. Okay, well that was the movie, like somebody wrote that script, you know, but does that actually mean that in real life? Do I actually agree with what they're saying? You know, I think that those things, asking yourself those questions can really help too when you're trying to get to the root of it. Okay, you had a question. Do you want the mic?
No, I'm okay. The mic's best in your hands.
Okay.
I would say, well, first picking off of what you just said, it is so true that what that 12-year-old said to you could stay with you forever. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will hurt your feelings forever.
Yeah.
I really liked Chrissy's statement that you have immense self-love and the world will still hurt you. And Camryn, you raised this great point about how the world has so much hypocrisy, where there's this implicit bias against size, and yet if you explicitly say, you know, shaming someone about size, then you are suddenly to blame. So I guess if there is this implicit subversive negativity towards it from the world, is there any way that the world unintentionally affirms that people can tune into to help on their journey towards self-love, which is more enduring?
Repeat the last part again. Tune into in terms of
way in which like the world doesn't intentionally seek to actually say it's okay to be fat, it's okay to be larger, but you can tune into if you're listening in a different way.
Like, are there any things that are like positive messaging that?
Yeah, where it's not so obvious, I guess. Because I agree that explicitly the world is absolutely biased.
Yes. But you're saying, is there any positive things?
Yeah.
For folks in larger bodies, you're saying? Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I think there are, number one, I think there's a lot of, like, fat positive activists that are doing amazing work. And I do think that following those types of people can be really helpful. I think that I feel like there was a time in history around 2020 and 2021 where it felt like as a whole we were moving towards a more size inclusive place, and I think we were making good progress, but that was like swiftly and abruptly ended and went back in the other direction. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a strong answer for that right now. I just feel like I don't know. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think that like particularly at this moment in time, politically as well as just like socially, I think like fatphobia unfortunately has become more acceptable again in ways that it wasn't before. And I think that we're like, I feel like anytime we're making progress in some way, there's like a swift backlash, and I feel like we're in that moment right now. And I think that people do feel more comfortable commenting or making, especially, I do think, I'm like thinking through my thoughts as I'm saying this, by the way, so forgive me, but like also, the one thing that I will say is I think that the introduction of GLP-1s, the one thing that I feel like, not the one thing, but one negative part about that is I think that if you are a person living in a larger body, people oftentimes, if you're not using, they feel like you don't have an excuse, quote unquote, right? Like you don't need an excuse to live a larger body, that's not a thing. But I think that people feel like, well, what's your excuse now? Because you could just be using a GLP-1. Like, what's the reason that you're fat now? Instead of being like, because fat people exist in the world, like, and this is the body that exists in. So I think there's just like a lot of weird things happening. And I will also say that there have been a lot of body positive influencers that have lost weight, and a lot of them have been open about the use of GLP-1s, which again, their body, their choice. But I think it does, a sense, sometimes like unintentionally, other people are like, yeah, well, if that person's doing it, like, why can't you just do the same thing? So I don't know, I'm saying a whole lot of nothing, but to say that I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a whole lot of nothing, because I agree with what you're saying about the sort of like, what's your excuse now? I think that there was, like we were saying in like 2020, 2021, especially around that time when you think about advertising and like TV, there were some like bigger body, that was when also like the whole mid-size thing was sort of happening too. There was some inclusion that was happening and representation that was happening in media at that time. Even if you think about like New York Fashion Week and like models walking, they would have like the plus models. There was more, a higher percentage of plus models that were added to the runway, and also in advertisements and things like that. So there was like that subtle like, okay, yes, it is okay, we are all kind of collectively reaching a little bit more of a better place, but it is true that that has backtracked, and I don't remember the number, but I was reading reports from this year's Fashion Week, and it's like the percentage of plus models dropped like almost back down to the levels that it was at before, and even if you look at, you know, ads, commercials, whatever, things on TV, social media, companies' ads, they're using less fat models in their marketing campaigns than they were before. So that was an example of something that was being done, that was giving that positive messaging, because I know I was receiving it, like seeing people, I was like, oh, okay, they putting some regular people in the stuff, that's great. But then it makes the absence of it / the decrease of it even more noticeable now, because it's like, okay, well, y'all were doing it, which means that it was possible, you know, you had a change of heart and then you changed it back. So that's kind of what I think. But I think she's right about that the pendulum swinging back and forth is always changing. So hopefully we can get to a place now where, besides just like that subtle messaging of like everybody is okay, that it is like a lot more explicit, but even beyond the explicitly like it's okay, that it becomes a thing that's not even really talked about or even like a thing, because in that way then we'll know that we've kind of reached a level of liberation. Literally, we will have been freed from the shackles of constantly talking about and commenting on each other's bodies and having to tell people it's okay that you're in this body. Like, of course it's okay that I'm in this body, but I only have to say that because you originally said it wasn't, you know. So ideally we'll get to a place where it's just like everybody's chill. That is my hope. That is my hope and prayer, is that we get to a place where it's just kind of like you just see everybody is who everybody is, and it's not even a discussion. So that's really great.
Yeah, I feel like there's a conversation about wellness, and there's a conversation about the wellness industry that's commodified wellness. Like for me, I have a skincare company, and I have to wake up every morning thinking about how am I going to market my skincare. Right now, I'm like, fuck the skincare. I'm going to be a farmer.
Well, first off, like your skincare.
I was about to say, she got this glowing, her skin is glowing. So
I feel like wellness at this moment is figuring out who is not getting their benefits. Like, who is not going to be able to feed their family?
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Who doesn't have housing? Like, for Black and brown folk, wellness also has to be, like, how are we going to make it to them?
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think one of my big critiques of the wellness industry is what you're talking about. Like, people want to talk about wellness without talking about social determinants of health. And, like, you can't have a conversation about wellness without that, right? Because how can a person be well if they don't know how they're going to feed their family? How can a person be well if they don't have access to healthcare? How can a person be well if they don't have access to affordable housing? Like, wellness has become commodified. It's like $1 trillion industry now, and it's all about like optimizing your health. And it's like, how about we meet people's basic needs? Because that will actually help optimize everybody's health. And like, it's such an interesting conversation. I see this online a lot, but people are like, oh, I went to Europe and I lost weight and my life is just better. Like, Europeans have healthcare. They have, they have so many things. They have food quality. They have healthcare. They get to take breaks during they have a completely different lifestyle than we do, and there is a reason, because those things actually do add to our well-being.
Yeah, and that's definitely, they talk a lot about like the obesity crisis in America, but food access and the type of food that you're even able to eat is a class issue, because a lot of times when it comes to like making healthy options, or like some people who can mostly like they have a mostly fast food diet because they live in a food desert, they don't necessarily have access to like fresher ingredients, vegetables, certain things. So sometimes your weight is out of your control because it's based on the type of food that you have access to at the time. So that's like another reason why, when you're saying that this is like a wellness issue and things like that, it absolutely is. And it's another reason why we can't be so kind of focused on the aesthetics of body size and things like that, because yeah, when it does come down to it, genetics plays a part, the actual nutrition facts of what you're eating plays a part in your body composition. So it's a multifaceted issue. That's absolutely true.
No, but seriously, let's just sit here and rant so everybody knows.
Oh yeah, tell us what it is.
Yeah, no, seriously, tell us what it is. That was a joke.
Folk? Like F-O-L-K?
P-H-O.
Oh, okay. I was like, I know it has to be something special. Okay, yes, P-H-O-L-K. All right, we're going to look it up.
I've also tried it. It's very good.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah, because this whole time, I'm like, her skin is glowing.
Oh,
I mean, it's the light is glinting on. Okay, folks. All right, we're going to get some folk skincare. Okay, I appreciate that. Also, I think we have to wrap up our Q&A section right now. What we're going to do, I mean, we can still talk to each other, but we're just going to wrap up the formal part of it. I do want to say thank you very much. If you give a little hand to Chrissy for all of her insight today. I really appreciate you being able to come talk to us and lead this discussion, and as well as for all of us to be able to check out this book. So we are going to transition into our general social mixer time, and also we have some books that are available for purchase that Chrissy will sign for you. She can put your name in it and everything, so you can help kick off your personal your body liberation journey. But before we do that, I also want to add a fun fact about something else that can help your body liberation journey, which is making your own clothes. This is my plug for Not Okay Club. One of the things that I faced a lot too, because Chrissy mentioned it earlier about like the clothes in the store, like when you go shopping as a fat person is an experience. Because first of all, if they have the clothes that fit you, they may be the ugliest clothes that you have ever seen. I don't know if you have heard of Samira, who she's a fat activist she made a song. She goes into like different stores and sees like what are the sizes they have and all of that. Love her very, very much. But that is a point that she makes all the time, is that like the stores do not really be taking into account everyone's body when making their clothes. And that was something that inspired me to start making my own clothes and like crocheting clothes and things like that, and making clothes that are made to measure, because that way it can help sort of increase your confidence when you know that the clothes that you have are like made to fit you. Also, you're able to express yourself in the ways that you see fit, adorn your body. I think also that when you are fat and you're ashamed of your body, you wear a lot of clothes that hide it. You may not express yourself in your style the way that you want to, either because you don't want to draw more attention to your body and things like that. But once I started kind of investigating more my personal style and getting more into making things for myself, it did make me feel better about my body too, because I was wearing things that I thought looked nice, that I wanted to show off, and also it kind of de-emphasizes, I guess, the way that your body looks, because we're more focused on what you got on and we want to see all of your regalia. So Not Okay Club, I'm a crochet designer, but there's lots of things that you can do with crochet besides just making your own clothes. But I do always recommend crochet as a way in general, because you can make things, but also in terms of helping your mental health and kind of increasing your mind-body connection, because it is something that you do with your hands and it's not digital, it's like a tangible thing. I highly, highly recommend for all of you to try it out. Not Okay Club, we have meetups here in New York that we get together in person and we make things, but we also have some resources online that will get you started, and you can learn a little bit more about the ways that crochet can help with your mental health, and also just coming together in events like this where we're able to talk with like-minded people and have open discussions about what it's really like being a Black woman, being a Black non-binary person, like in this world, in this current state of affairs. I highly recommend also connecting with other people in the community, because that is one way that you can also help improve your mental health, but also learn from each other about ways that we can improve our body image. So because it brought me to Chrissy. You see what I'm saying? Like, you meet a lot of great people, and you can learn a lot about yourself and others, like, in that way. So besides just Not Okay Club, there are lots of other community organizations in this area and online that you can get involved with based on your own personal interests. And I think that connecting with people in those ways is another way that you can get your self-esteem up. So we are here if you would like to talk to us about the club. Our VP, Ruby Summer, has been back there. I don't know if y'all have seen, but she was working on her project. Can you hold there for a second, Ruby? She's back there crocheting. Is that an earring holder?
No, I'm gonna felt on top of it.
Oh,
So
yes, we're doing a needle felt. Oh, wait, quick promo. We're doing a needle felting, a learn to needle felt workshop at Oko Farms. It's a black-owned aquaponics farm that is in Bushwick area by the Jefferson L. That's at the end of the month. It's on the 22nd. There's a flyer for it on that little wall, the Gladys poster wall back there. But if you ever want to learn more about our programs, support our free programs, we are a 501c3 organization. We just got our status, yay. And so now, oh, thank you. Yeah, so now any contributions that you make to us are tax deductible. I do want to let y'all know that. But we put on, all of our programs are free for our members, and we really are prioritizing doing this sort of community work. So if you want to have more events like this, you would like to support us, the posters that have the QR codes, they have the link to our Instagram, so you can see what we do, see when our workshops are. It has the link to our website, so you can learn more about us and see our other chapters and various things. And it also has a link what's the other one? Oh yeah, the fundraiser link. But also on our website link, right after we finish this, there will be a link to Chrissy's, some resources that we have curated for you all to continue this discussion, which includes Chrissy's Substack, where she is still writing about this topic, because this book is out. She's working on some other top secret things. But if you'd like to subscribe to Chrissy's Substack, it also has some other recommended reading and also a couple of website resources for things where if you want to do a little bit more work related to this, read up more, anything like that. And also I think it has the link to our YouTube, which is where we will have this stream uploaded hopefully this weekend, so that you can play this back if you want to revisit anything that we talked about tonight. So that is my spiel. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Definitely go downstairs and get you some of the orange wine or one of the other drinks if you haven't yet. But you're free to hang around and talk now, but I'm going to just turn all of our mics off and stuff. But thank you so much. All right. Oh, and the books, Chrissy, do you want to do the signing at the counter there, or you want to bring them over here?
People want to personally.
Okay, if you would like to personally